people who are perceived as visionaries, it's often like revisionist history.
Yeah.
Like I imagine that Patrick Collison, when he started Stripe, didn't feel like a visionary. He was like, we're just going to make payments work online.
Yeah.
And then like increasing the GDP of the internet. Like I think that probably came a little bit after they started solving the problem.
I think most of us have someone in our life who every time we speak to them, we feel like we really should raise our game. For me, that might be Paul, today's guest. Paul sold his first company to Mux, the video API, in 2021 and worked at Twilio in the really early days, as well as Mux after the acquisition. And Paul founded Browserbase in January 2024, which was also the same time that I met Paul when he was writing his first lines of code for Browserbase. Browserbase is a browser automation dev tool. So for all the people building agents, they need infrastructure for their agents to be able to go around and do stuff on the web. And they've grown like crazy. In June of this year, 2024, they announced that they raised $6.5 million. And the other crazy thing is that every time I spoke to a VC, they would say that the company they were most excited about was Browserbase. So they really struck this chord, and a lot of people are excited about Browserbase. So the obvious question is, how has Paul been able to go from zero to where they're at now so quickly, as well as how have they been able to create that excitement, especially around investors? We also talk about how to hire, including how to hire your friends. We talk about what to look for in your hires for DevTools. One thing to stick around for that I think is the most interesting part of the conversation is how Paul prioritizes things and some of the things that he doesn't prioritize. Not many people are willing to talk about that, so I find that really interesting. It's a really cool episode. Enjoy.
You know, you saw Browserbase day -10, I would say.
Yeah.
Very, very early days. So it's kind of cool to have come full circle and now be on the pod. I'm excited.
Yeah, and it's kind of crazy because I remember, like, I think when we first met, I was like, I made this like little script that would like book badminton courts for me, and it was like surprising how annoying it is to work with browsers and so.
Yeah, that's a canon event, right? Like every developer early on in their life cycle actually wants to automate some sort of task that they do.
Yeah.
And it means they have to go out into this rogue internet and load a web page, click a button, fill in a form, and they use beautiful soup. They're writing some hard-coded stuff. And then as soon as they want to like deploy that, where they can close their laptop and it runs. Yeah, we'll always work on your machine, right? Doesn't work on Amazon for some reason. That's something that I think is just so core to every developer's experience. And that's where Browserbase comes in, because we make it so you can deploy these browser automation scripts to the cloud and have them run reliably without having to replicate everything that happens on your local dev environment.
Yeah, it's very, very cool. And I guess you already felt this was like a thing, right? And then it seems like it was like seeing the rise of agents has kind of like, was that like an aha moment where you're like, I have to build this?
Well, I always knew that this particular piece of infrastructure was a painful thing, because I had spent my time as CTO of my last company just nights and nights and nights digging through old Stack Overflow questions, learning how to find the right font driver to make emojis work, or why, certain things weren't working in the browser for this version of Chrome, but they work in this version. So I felt that pain, and I was just really unhappy with the tools that existed out there for running this kind of stuff. And then it kind of became more clear to me this would be valuable, because I made a small SaaS application during like 2023 or so, which was actually like logging in and helping Airbnb hosts automate their messages. Not many people know this story, but kind of like a nights and weekends project, I built this business called Guest Guru, which was a like Airbnb chatbot. It was super early on in like ChatGPT. And part of that workflow required like logging into Airbnb and responding to messages, because there was no messaging API we could have access to. So from that, I pulled out my old browser automation knowledge combined with an LLM, and it kind of clicked for me like, oh, this is actually going to be a really common primitive for other people who are building AI applications or AI agents. And from then, I just did a bunch of other conversations with other people who were building, and this was something that always came up as like a top 3 pain point for them. So it felt really clear to go start the company. I quit my job on the same day someone told me, hey, I would pay money for this right now. I was like, sounds good. I'll walk back into the office. I think they were having a board meeting that day, which is a tough time to quit, but they were very graceful about it, and they were supportive for me to go start this company. I always said that the only company I would start again would be a headless browser company. That's all I know about from my time at Stream Club, and that's the one I'm starting now.
That's very cool. And if you had to put your finger on like how you've been able to like kind of grow so fast in the first 8 months of Browserbase, like why that's been.
Okay, quick announcement. WorkOS are hosting a one-day conference dedicated to enterprise software. It's called the Enterprise Ready Conf, and it's taking place on October 30th in San Francisco. They have got the founder and CEO of Vanta, Christina, speaking, as well as the head of product for ChatGPT. Yes, ChatGPT, Brit. So if you've got questions for them, go along. And they've got their founder of WorkOS, of course, Michael Greenwich, who's been on the show twice, and you know how much he knows about enterprise software. So if you're kind of thinking about, selling enterprise software, or you already do it, you should definitely check out this conference. Go to enterprise-ready.com or click the link in the show notes.
Yeah, I think the growth to like the majority of our customers are actually people who built this on their own. Like we really tapped into the pain point, like people who have built and maintained this stack on their own, and they're like, screw this, I don't want to. Or they use a competitor who they haven't really innovated on that side.
Is that because it's more for like testing rather than?
Yeah, I think a lot of the tooling is built around testing. I also think that like generally the people who've played in this space have been more bootstrapped companies or people who've been like, one of our biggest competitors is run by a single guy with a bunch of contractors. And the dashboard really hasn't changed since like 2019. I was a customer of theirs until I built Browserbase. So I think that they were just kind of dissatisfied with, they had this complex piece of infrastructure. They wanted a Vercel or Clerk-like experience for managing this, but no one had really stepped up to build a product level that would match that. And I'm really lucky that I was building for me, so I knew exactly the features I wanted to. Like our roadmap to this date is still the stuff that I think that we should have had on day one that we just haven't had time to build yet. And by delivering on that and also like evangelizing the problem a little bit, I think that we've been able to win over the trust of quite a few customers, especially startups. And I remember when I was CTO of my startup, the way I decided about buying SaaS or infra, I'd ask other CTOs, what are you using? So this year I really focused on making sure that I was talking to all of the SF AI agent builders and AI application builders and making sure that they knew about us and they were choosing us. And if you win SF, I think you win a lot in AI right now. So it's lucky I've been here for 10 years. So I already know where everyone hangs out. Southern Pacific Brewery. That's it, right? That's the only spot.
Maybe that's a good aside is like, it's funny how the marketing in SF is almost like kind of like small town marketing in the sense of like people have billboards and it's very like event driven in this, not in a technical sense, in like literally running events and meetups and stuff like that.
Yeah. Everyone knows each other here, which is really, it's like, it feels like Twitter is a lot bigger than it actually is. But at one point you start ending up on market maps next to people who the other founders, and you send it to them like, hey, look, good to see you, or someone will say, hey, watch out for this list of companies. And I'm like, no, these are all people I know, right? Yeah. It's a small town. And like, I think that also means that your reputation here carries with you, and you have to be mindful of how you treat your employees, how you treat your competitors, your customers, because people don't forget that stuff here. And I've really prided us at Browserbase on being like just really good to our team and really transparent to our customers. And we do things like we had a short window of decreased performance, and we sent a company like a Slack blast to everybody for something that I think a lot of the people would have just swallowed and not talked about. Like we're trying to be super transparent about what doesn't work, because that's really frustrating as a dev when the thing isn't working. You don't know if it's your code or the vendor's code. From day one, we want to try and be really transparent about what's going on our side and what's going on your side, and helping people figure out why is this thing not working.
Yeah, and what kind of stuff were you saying in like not in specifics, but like when you talk about like decrease, you said decreased performance?
Yeah, so like there was like a 6-minute window where session creation was slowed down, and we said, hey, like here's what happened. This is the start time. This is the end time. This is what you would have seen. It's resolved now, and we're post-morting it. So,
you kind of put that in the community Slack. Or
we send it to everybody. Just because we want to be like, I think you could have just put that in a status page and hope no one noticed it, but we wanted to be really like explicit with communication.
Yeah, that's really cool. Okay, so you're growing very fast, and you're building the roadmap of what you wanted, basically. The other thing that I think that you've been doing is like, I think there's this, people talk about like hot companies, and I think Browserbase is definitely very, very like,
we definitely have VC market fit for sure. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and I was kind of like reflecting on like why, like from an outside perspective, and trying to like think a lot about this. So I kind of wanted to ask you that as well, like, because I think it's always like kind of two sides to this, right? It's like you pleasing customers, and then also like being able to raise the capital that you need to grow the business. What do you think you've done really well on this?
Yeah, I think we just had a really clear narrative. Like we always knew what we were going to do from day one.
Yeah.
I wrote like a 3,000 word long form memo around like, here's what the problem is. Here's how we intend to solve it. Here are the risks. Here's the bets that we're taking.
Yeah.
And I published that 3 months before we even started the company.
Yeah.
And I think my story really aligns with the company. I started my career at Twilio. I was actually an intern during the IPO. Really? So I got to see like a best-in-class infra company start there. I did Stream Club where I learned about headless browsers.
Yeah.
We sold that to Mux, who was another just amazing infra company with great infra founders.
Yeah.
And from all of that, there's like this really cohesive story that like I should go build an infra company. Yes. I've been at 2 of them. Yeah. I was CTO of a company that had a lot of relevant experience with headless browsers. And it's just a problem that like really aligned with my story. And I think people also saw the same, world playing out that I did.
Yes.
Like, the future of software isn't just software making you faster at what you do. It's software doing the work for you. And if software is doing the work for you, it means that you're going to have software go out and browse websites using a web browser, just like we do when we're doing work. And if we can help power that in some way, I think that's just a really powerful place to be in the future of software. And to me, that future seems really clear.
Yeah. And because it was kind of funny, we were talking before, and I was kind of putting you in this bucket with, I would say like Michael from WorkOS is really good at that as well, of having this like vision. And then you were like, really? Like I see myself as like the anti-visionary. And we were talking about it, and it seems like it's like, you don't see it as like a vision. It's like you believe this thing, you believe you have a worldview on the future, and you don't see it as like vision. It's like you believe that, or in your mind that agents are going to be like a very disruptive.
I think it's like people who call themselves, or people who are perceived as visionaries, it's often like revisionist history. Yeah. Like I imagine that Patrick Collison, when he started Stripe, didn't feel like a visionary. He was like, we're just going to make payments work online. Yeah. And then increasing the GDP of the internet. Like, I think that probably came a little bit after they started solving the problem, but he probably looks like a visionary now. I mean, he's an amazing founder. I think same thing with Jeff Lawson. He was like, these telephony APIs don't exist, or they're painful, and I want to send a text, and like, that would be really helpful. Like, I think there's always like this aspirational vision, but I try not to like get too distracted from what we're doing. Like, we're solving this like immediate problem. We have ambitions to continue to solve it in better ways and make it easier for developers. And to me, that's like an endless like optimization game. Like we can infinitely make the infrastructure better, more affordable. We can actually move up the stack and solve the customer's problems in a more reliable way at the SDK layer, maybe even higher than that. So it's just more of a pursuit of solving a problem to perfection than it is like, I want to become Elon Musk in like this vision, like I just really love the problem we're solving, and I think it has a place in the world.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. It's for me, if I wanted to go the VC route, like I would want to feel as like sure on a problem as you are. It's like if you just wanted to write like a function that calculates something, it's like trivial.
Easy, yeah.
But then as soon as you bring in like, it has to go get some number from some website.
If I want to download my bank statements, I have to go buy Plaid or integrate with Plaid. I can't log into my own bank account to click the button. Wells Fargo doesn't have an API I can use very easily. But I should be able to just log into my bank account and download those things in an automated way without like going through this whole rigmarole. So I think that like what's really exciting me about Browserbase is that we have a chance to be a category defining company, which means like we are early to a category that is going to be more important in the future, and we can be in front of that category.
Yeah.
And that's the best type of infrastructure business to build, because you get to kind of pave the way a little bit.
Yeah.
And there will be people who copy what we do or, compete with us. And I think that's fine. Like, that's a really big market. I actually don't. I think anybody who worries about competitors before $10 million of ARR, they're probably going to lose for other reasons. So they can't get to 10. So it's not something that keeps me up at night. But for us, I'm excited about like using our firsthand knowledge of DevTools and infra and the things that we love to use on other systems. And how do we apply those same principles to browser automation and automating the web? I just love to give developers like more sophisticated primitives to use and more sophisticated tools. So programming becomes just an expressive thing. Yeah. So with Browserbase, I think we're doing that by like letting people write code that controls the internet.
Yeah, it's really cool. And so, okay, so you're at Twilio, and then you built Stream Club, a DevTool, at Mux, a DevTool. Browserbase is building tools for developers, but I guess in particular, it's like AI engineers would be like one categorization. One of the questions I had for you is like, do you feel like it's different, the audience that you're building Browserbase for versus the audience that you were kind of like the type of developers that you're building Browserbase for versus your previous experiences?
It's actually, it turns out engineers buying AWS and engineers buying Browserbase have the same questions, right? Like, will this infrastructure work? Like, how much is it going to cost? How reliable is it? How does it scale? So it's very much like an infrastructure business. And right now, one of our target segments are like these new AI companies, because we know that they need help right now to get to market faster, to launch their thing. So they're willing to adopt and use Browserbase. There's a huge category of developers who aren't doing AI that actually also need Browserbase and headless browsers for a variety of data retrieval tasks, browser testing, just traditional RPA that doesn't use any AI at all. RPA, robotic process automation, it's like, automating something with Playwright. So the customers aren't very different. I think that what we've done is just really tried to serve these startups that are just getting started, because this is when they're making their fundamental infrastructure choices. And what I think about is like, every time we add a cohort of new customers, how is their revenue going to grow over the next 12 months, right? Yeah. And what's nice is like, maybe like the first couple weeks, not going to be a huge customer, right? Yeah. They're just building their thing, they're getting started, they're going to launch. But as they grow and find product market fit, we get to grow with them, which is the most beautiful part of infra businesses, is that you win when your customers win. So I try and do a lot. Like, I'm reviewing YC apps of some of our customers right now, right? Like doing everything I can to help them move along, as well as like from some of our larger customers, like how do I help them navigate the procurement process so they can get to buy Browserbase faster and get their internal project they're trying to build to prod sooner.
Yeah, and how are you spending your time right now? Because you're also, that's another thing, is that you're a solo founder, which is, that was a visceral reaction to that. Yeah.
Well, I'm happily married, so I'm a co-founder for life. Julia does a lot for me, so I would not be able to do this without an amazing spouse. I've also just been able to hire like really great people. Like, my first manager at Twilio is now our head of engineering.
Really?
Yeah, that's super cool.
So cool.
One of the people I worked with at Mux on the browser stuff I did actually now works for us. We just hired our designer who worked with me at Stream Club. So we're reassembling the dream team. Like, it's a lot of people I worked with before who I want to work with again, and we're able to get them to come join us. Being a solo founder, I mean, I spent the first third of Browserbase building the product. I built the whole product with some great contractors we brought in to help us as well. The second third was really kind of putting the team together, and we built this amazing core team of infrastructure engineers. And then the current third that we're in is really scaling the company and preparing for, I think 2025 is going to be a really big year for us, and I think we're starting to see signs of that, especially as foundational models become better and better. Claude 3.5 Sonnet has unlocked a lot of really interesting use cases. Yeah. And I think we'll see that more with an evolution of foundational models. So we're really thinking about how do we prepare to scale the company? And like, that's like, we have a PTO policy now. Like, what does it mean to take time off? Yeah. Like, we have an expense policy. Like, I'm not the only person managing all our expenses anymore. So we're trying to hire and really put in place the things we need to scale the company. Yeah. So I can kind of move into this place where I can actually do the highest leverage things. Like, it's probably not the best use of my time right now to like take our Amazon bill and put it into Ramp. It's probably a better use of my time for me to be like really nitty gritty in the product docs and like giving feedback on how this feature should work, and hopping into customer fires and helping support them when the team is busy. Like that's the best use of my time, is like making the product better and helping customers. So I'm trying to hire more great people to help us scale Browserbase. And for us, that means like building out a team on the go-to-market side. Like we have our first sales engineer starting. Sophie's going to come in and she's going to get on all the customer calls and help support them. So I can maybe skip a few customer calls in the future, and that'll be okay because she's going to do a great job.
Yeah, that's super, super cool. How is it like hiring your friends? Is it like, do you have any tips for people that are like, I want to hire my friend?
Yeah, I don't know. I think hopefully your friends like you, you know. I think salary negotiation with friends is tough. Thankfully, like we've always kind of had like compensation bands. So like we've been able to like say, this is like what everyone else is going to be making. So we have to stay within this to make the conversation better.
That's smart.
And then just like working with friends is all about being transparent, you know, sharing candid feedback, setting expectations appropriately. I want to be friends with everyone at my company. Like this is like one of the biggest reasons why I'm a founder is actually this idea of building like a good company. And to me, that means a company where everyone is actually viewing this job as the best job they ever have. And I actually get more fulfillment from that personally than like, you know, becoming the biggest company in the world. I'd rather we have a company where everyone actually leaves their job, leaves their day super energized and is going home and is excited about the work they're doing. And if we do our jobs right, hopefully we can make them generationally wealthy too. So that impacts their family and their kids and their grandkids. So that all starts with like making sure the team is really aligned with what we're doing and excited about it, and keeping them engaged by giving them the opportunities for them to grow too. Yeah,
that's really cool. And are there any like things that you would recommend if someone's like hiring like their first people in terms of just like, you know, like making sure that people are energized when they leave the office, or, you know?
Yeah, I think for us, like, I just really wanted to make sure everyone wanted to work here, and I told them all the reasons why they shouldn't. I was really clear. Like I was trying to convince people not to work at Browserbase. Like, I mean, obviously I think the first half of the conversation is me selling Browserbase and why it's so great and what the upsides are. But at some point in the conversation, they also need to want you. I think as a founder, especially a solo founder, your first few hires, you're like, I need this person. If I don't get them, we're screwed. I can't move forward. That just results in people having not the right expectations aligned. So I always try and start with the sell of like why you should work at Browserbase. This is like, here's the opportunity, here's the world we see. And then I end with, here's all the reasons you shouldn't. Like, hey, like we sometimes work out of core hours. That's okay. It's like, that doesn't mean you have to be working at the office for those outside the core hours, but just know that it's going to happen. Or there's a lot of work here. It's going to be kind of hard and stressful sometimes. There's fires. Like we're running around, we're reprioritizing. It's very dynamic. Like the more that I can like lay that all out so they have that choice, I think it results in us having a higher success rate, you know? And for us, that's the most important thing, is like making sure people come and are successful in the role when they join.
Yeah, that's really cool. And what were you like looking for in people that you were bringing in? Was there like stuff, because I guess you worked with a lot of people within DevTools, and you probably have like, you know, probably have like some kind of mental like stack rank.
My hit list?
I would want, this guy.
You're top 5. No, I didn't have any sort of like CRM. I actually we hired someone who came inbound from us on Twitter who saw one of our like videos I put out and said, this looks great. I'd love to work with you. That was like an awesome hire and a great signal. I mean, we hired from all different channels. Like we had a recruiter for one person. I met somebody at a hackathon. We hired them, an old coworker of mine, people who came inbound. Like we've really used like every channel we can to hire good people.
And is there some stuff that you're like, ooh, this, like, you know, they do something, they say something, you're like, or you see some sort of specific type of work and you're like, yes, like this is the kind of person that I'm looking for.
I think I now have a pretty good nose for eng talent. I cannot distill that down into why. It's pretty crazy. But
Taste.
I've hired a lot, like across like 3-4 companies now. It's weird. Like I actually can assess eng talent pretty reliably in the first conversation without even seeing any code. I think in the end, what I was looking for with Browserbase is I'd always ask this question, which is now ruined after this podcast, which is like, what's your favorite dev tool? And tell me about like the tools and infrastructure that you love and why do you love it? And what don't you like? And from that, it actually it can be in a conversational setting where now I'm hearing about this person's product preferences, like what their expectations are of the things they work with. And for working at an infrastructure company, you probably should have some opinions around infrastructure. Like if someone says Stripe is amazing, like, oh yeah, I like Stripe, I see that. And then they say usage-based billing at Stripe is really poorly built. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. They really know what they're talking about. But if they say the Amazon console is really the pinnacle of developer tools, it may be a red flag and you want to reconsider, So
yeah,
it is what it is.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point, because I feel like it's like there's this skill doesn't kind of show up on like resumes traditionally about like, API design, or like having something that just feels good, like when you use it, like using this API, it feels good, and some people are really good at kind of getting to that, whereas others, I feel like it's something that probably is quite difficult to kind of.
I have a crazy analogy here.
Yeah.
Okay, so buying a dev tool is like buying a jacket.
Interesting.
Okay, when's the last time you bought a jacket?
Yeah, I bought a jacket just before I came.
Okay.
It's like, so I get a Patagonia one just to fit in.
Well, okay, that's the easy buy. When you buy a jacket, maybe you see it at the store and you're like, okay, yeah, that's a jacket. It's got sleeves.
Yeah.
It's got pockets. It looks nice. If you're buying linear, it's got gradients all over the place. But you still gotta, before you buy the jacket, you gotta try it on.
Yeah.
You gotta like, okay, the pockets are here, the sleeves feel right, it's cozy inside. I think it's the same way as like buying a dev tool. Like no matter how sexy the landing page is and like has all the features, developers need to try the thing, right? Before they buy it. And look at that jacket, right? And for us, we actually try, and when you finish our sign-up flow, you're actually dumped in like an IDE in the web browser where you can click run and you can see code being run on a browser. You can edit that code and play with it. And like you immediately see where Browserbase is used for and how it works within the first like 5 seconds.
Yeah.
And that allows us to kind of move forward that try-on period, the moment of magic is what some people call it, as early in the sign-up flow as possible. Because we're building kind of complex and previously niche infrastructure. I mean, I don't think a lot of people know the in-depth parts of the Chrome DevTools protocol and Chromium or even Playwright. But when they see code runs here, browser does this, it kind of clicks. And that's like, when I see that, the session recordings of people doing that, I'm like, oh yeah, they get it because now they're typing in it and they are editing this thing live. And now they know how they can build their thing using Browserbase.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I was speaking to Colin from Clerk, and one of the things that he was talking about was like, they want to get people not to use a sign up component. They found that like sign up and login component, people weren't really like getting the value of Clerk. They had to like get further and add like the profile component. And then they would suddenly see like, oh, I get this gives you more than just like the stuff that I had previously. Is it like, is that part of it? It's like you're trying to get people to do a specific thing once they log into Browserbase. And if they do that, they're very likely to actually, try that to like use it properly.
Yeah. For us, it's like, do they run the sample code? That's generally sample code. You have to like use your terminal and git clone and then run this SDK or IDE or whatever. But our sample code is in the dashboard and it's a fully functioning IDE. So like if they run the sample code and they modify it, they're in, they get it. They understand like how this works. And I think we're doing a pretty terrible job of this right now. I'd give us a C+.
Okay.
But it's also been 8 months. So like,
seems like that's better than almost every.
When it's still working, our conversion rates for post sign up to upgrade are like above market. And I'm happy about it. It's not the brightest burning fire. But it's one where like, I think you asked like, how do we move so quickly? I do regret the quality of some of the things that we have at Browserbase. Like I think I look at our docs and I think they'd be way better. Like our SDKs, I want to make our SDKs 10 times better. And maybe that's just like every founder says that about their products, but like being okay with quality for now while you focus on more important things. So we focus a lot on infrastructure scalability. Like in July, we actually just like could not add more browsers. We had reached scaling limits that we didn't think we'd reach until the end of the year. So we had to kind of say, we need to make sure this infra can go, for the next 100,000 concurrent browsers. We put all of our efforts on that. And because of that, we're a small team, we haven't focused on other things. So being a founder means constantly prioritizing different things. And for us, like, making sure it works great and works reliably was more important than making sure the docs are like the top tier docs. Like, I want to move the proxy section outside of the subsection and make it into the sidebar thing, and like rewrite this whole thing, and rate limits need to be clearer. Like, all that stuff just kind of sits in RAM in my brain, and like, but that's okay because the team is going to keep chugging through all that stuff.
Yeah, I actually really agree with you, and I feel like it's actually not necessarily like something that is like, I hear people say like, the docs are like the most important thing and all sort of stuff. But like, when you look at OpenAI, they massively deprioritized kind of docs, SDK and stuff, and people were still queuing out the door to use it just because it was so good, the core product. And I feel like that's kind of what you're describing, is like, if someone is supposed to run a browser session for a very specific, important thing and it doesn't work, that's going to cause them actually a lot more pain. They'll probably bear with you and just like send a support message. And if you reply to them, that docs thing is like not an issue. But if things don't run reliably, it's like, that is an issue for people to run their core business with you. It's
the most important thing is like reliability of the infrastructure. And it's been our number one focus, is like making sure how many nines can we get, and doing that from day one. And I think we can tolerate docs being a little bit, there's a grammatical mistake or something, but we can't tolerate the infra not working. And that's been where we shift our priorities. And the reason why I'm saying all of this is like, I think a lot of founders don't talk about the things that they have to, that they're not proud of. Yeah, exactly. And like, I've listened to some conversations and I'm like, oh wow, these guys are crushing it all over the place.
Everything.
Yeah. And like, I think you opened it like, Browserbase is crushing it, like, as a hot company. Like, even a hot company has things that we want to improve. And I think that's okay. Yeah. Like, if you don't, as a founder, especially a solo founder, if you don't accept that there are going to be fires burning, you'll never actually do the most important work, because you're going to run around like a chicken with your head cut off. So for us, we focus on the most important thing, which is reliability. We work with great people to help us out when we can't have capacity. Shout out Charlie, who wrote all of our docs. I hope you're watching. Like, it's...
Oh, is that Charlie from...
Charlie from
Charlie
Defer. Yeah, Defer. One of my favorite DevTool companies. Yeah, RIP. It's so good.
I love Charlie.
But yeah, like, I think that's where we work with other people to help kind of like move our product along when we can't focus on it. But in the end, like, every product has these little things you want to make better. Yeah. And as long as you know about them, then you're in a good place. Yeah. But the worst thing is if we don't know what's bad about your own product, that's like the scariest thing, because then you have no idea what you need to go fix.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes total sense. And I think it's a really good point about like knowing what you don't prioritize. And I do try to ask this. It's just like, a lot of people, aren't necessarily in the habit of like talking publicly about like, oh, okay, these things were not so good. But it's always like, if you really, really care about, like, there's probably a few things within every company that they really, really care about, and they're really, really good at, hopefully, the things they care about. But you can't, it's really hard to like care about everything and focus on everything, because like at startups, I feel like it is, for better or worse, like you can try and make people like give them agency, but there's still like so much that's like, if Paul doesn't care about it, then it's going to be really hard for you to be like exceptional at that thing.
Yeah, I think self-awareness is the first step before self-improvement. Yeah. So for us, if I know what I want to improve, then we can go improve that. But if you're like, if you publicly say, yeah, everything is so great about a product, and then someone looks at your docs and there's like this section that's unclear about burst versus sustain rate limits that's in your brain, like, I don't know, it just feels like the most important thing with infrastructure companies is that we're building trust. Yeah. Like, our customers are trusting us with mission critical workflows, and they have to believe us. And if you lie to your customers, they're not going to trust you. And if you do that repeatedly, you lose customers. Yeah. So I think we bias to being more authentic and transparent where possible, just so that like they know that we're going to tell them when things aren't going to work. You don't want to promise something that you can't deliver on, and then somebody else is going to be screwed over by that.
Yeah, so. That's really cool. No, that makes complete sense.
It should be the default, I think. It makes sense because it's like, oh, cool, being honest with your customers. That sounds like a good idea. But like, I think there's a lot of startup knowledge, which has been like sell first, build later. And yes, there is some of that you should do. But I think oftentimes if you sell the moon and you can't deliver on it, I think it just burns a lot of credibility.
Yeah. Well, I guess because that is a good point as well. It's like there is often this talk about like, you know, I mean, especially on like Twitter and stuff right now, there's a lot of talk about like scale and like how, you know, you don't actually need to worry about this stuff.
Oh, the VPS, levels IO.
Sort of stuff, right? Like it's kind of like, so it seems like there is some kind of nuance there of like when you should and shouldn't care about, you know, scalability, for instance.
Yeah, I think if you can run your whole app on a VPS and it works great all the time, you should do that. I fully believe that. If you want to run your own browsers, I support that. And I'll tell you exactly how we do ours.
Yeah.
But my bet, and the reason why I build this business is that it's actually really annoying to do that. Like I've done it myself. Yeah. Like I wouldn't have started this company if I didn't think we had sufficient 0 to 1 maintenance pain of like, it's hard to get started to run, let's say 1,000 concurrent web browsers in a cloud environment in a secure way. Yeah. That's hard to do 0 to 1,000 concurrent browsers. But then it's also hard to maintain that fleet of browsers and like deal with things like Chrome updates that are very important for security reasons. You have to roll the whole fleet, or you want to support file downloads, which means that you have to synchronize each browser's download folder to some S3 bucket and then map that for your downstream customers to download. And then like you just like, it's a death by 1,000 cuts on like improving that thing. Yeah.
So you become a full-time job for like a small startup.
Yeah, like sure, just run your own Postgres. Yeah. Oh, but you want a nice UI? Okay, you got to go buy Postdeco, and then oh wait, you want to do a replica? Okay, you got to figure that out. You want backups, like, or just use Supabase. Yeah. You know, I choose to use Supabase, and I like that.
So. Yeah, they're very cool guys.
Very cool guys.
Yeah.
The other Paul.
Yeah, the other Paul.
DevTools Pauls.
We've got Paul from
JamSocket, Paul Butler.
Yeah. Who's also a browser guy.
Yeah. So. Yeah. There's a Paul army building here. Watch out. Maybe that's why we have VC market fit. Like Paul DevTool founder is the move.
Like, wait a second.
Yeah. If you change your name to Paul, and you're in the group chat now. So watch out.
Yeah. That's incredible. So this is like the second time round that you're going on like building a DevTool. Are there things that you're doing differently this time consciously that we haven't covered so far?
Yeah, I mean, solo founder is one of them. I think I love my co-founders. One of my co-founders actually became a customer today, which is pretty cool. Yeah, okay, it's awesome. Wow, cool. Shout out Lan. But I think being a solo founder allows us to move at a lot more speed because there's no alignment needed. Like it's me. When you have a co-founder, it's like you and your co-founder getting aligned, and then the founders with the team being aligned. Like when it's just me, it's just one step remove. And I think being aligned is the most important thing for a startup, and we can make that a lot faster with just me. I also think that like we're working fully in person all the time.
Yeah,
5 days a week in San Francisco. We just got a new office. And that's been great. I mean, it's so hard because I meet so many amazing devs that I want to hire that I can't because they don't want to move from where they're at. And I totally respect that. I don't think one is better than the other. Yeah. Like, I think what Jake is doing at Railway fully remote is like really impressive. And the way they pull it off, I think is like so cool. And they do a really good job of it. So it's not like a choice of what's better or worse, but like we all opted into this culture of being in person and going to the office every single day. And we need to honor that because as soon as we break that, then it's like, well, why did we all agree to do this in the first place? Yeah. Like, we're building an in-person company, and that's been like a very like conscious and sometimes painful decision. Yeah. But you know,
yeah. What would you say are like the biggest benefits of being in person?
Yeah, it's hard to put it into words, but I think like there's this more contagious energy. You get to see a lot more of like when someone is like really struggling and like they're putting in a lot of work into something and it's really hard. So I think it makes the celebrations of big achievements much grander. Yeah. Because I think when someone is remote, at least for me, it's harder to gauge the effort they put into something. Yeah. But when I know Dom is at the office, like putting in a ton of work on this new browser pooling feature and it ships, I'm like, that's so awesome. Like I know how hard you worked on that. And I literally saw you there before I got there and after I left, like for weeks straight, you know? So it feels like everything becomes a lot more tangible with the work that's being put in. And it's just fun. Like we go out to lunch and dinner all the time. Like we hang out. Like it makes it really easy to have impromptu things happen, which is a lot harder when you're remote.
Yeah, I was actually talking to someone who was working in your office, and I was like, oh, what's the name of the place that you were working at before?
Solaris.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was like, oh, do you know Paul? And he was like, yeah. It was funny because there was just Paul in the office. And then there were like more, and then there were like even more. And suddenly there were like all these people in this like little office, and now they've got, I think.
Yeah, we've had like 3 or 4 offices. Yeah. I remember I got the first one, it was just me and 3 desks. It was like, this is so much space.
Yeah.
And then we have 5 people and 3 desks. And then we got a bigger office. And then we've run out of desks way too often, actually. Even in our current office, at our current hiring plan, we'll run out of desks in the next couple of months. So I'm going to give up my desk probably in like November, and then I'll work from a couch or something.
Has it been harder to scale desks or browser sessions?
Ooh, it's easier. I mean, I don't know. It depends on if you're in US West 2 or not. I think it's been easier to scale browser sessions than desks these days. It's harder to get more desks. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Wow, that's actually crazy. Okay, Paul, I think that was like pretty much what we had time for. Was there anything else that you wanted to talk about before?
No, I was just going to add that it's really great to have, this podcast. And I think that it is a small community of infrastructure builders and DevTools builders. And the more that we can kind of get together and share the pros and cons and the pains and the stuff we're going through, I actually think that it makes the whole infra community much better. So I'm happy for you to put us together. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you. And it's so cool to actually I think this is, one of the very few DevTools I've seen at the earliest stages going and it's been so cool. So I've learned a ton from you just watching how you do things and stuff. So it's really cool to actually have time to ask you the questions that I had. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks,
Paul.
man.
And
good to be here.
Yeah, I'm expecting a huge IPO in a few years, and that you'll be back on.
We'll do a 10-year reunion one, and
yeah.
I'll have no hair. And
I've already got no hair.
There we go. Perfect. I'll match. I'll grow a beard again. It'll be a good one.
Yeah. Okay.
Dude, that was fun.
Yeah.
Thank you.